Hey there, fellow sojourners, and welcome back to another edition of Appropriating the Culture. On today's episode, we discuss whether or not it's an oxymoron to be an evangelical for Harris. I'm Pastor Shane, and I'll be on the Zoom call today as we appropriate some culture. So recently, the Harris campaign has been holding segregated Zoom calls tailored to certain segments of the population, and recently, they held the Incoherent Christians for Harris. Evangelicals for Harris, which sounded something like this.
I look at the platform of the candidates that are before us. When I look at the platform of Trump, it is bankrupt of grace and truth with which this work is built upon. It is bankrupt of compassion. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. I look at which candidate is leading me to love the other. Which candidate is leading us towards compassion? Which candidate is leading us to walk out the Sermon on the Mount, which is the blueprint of love? This verse implies that God's actions, including the gift of grace, stem from his loving nature. I also look at this work as grace as a gift. Ephesians 2:8-9 articulates that grace is a gift from God. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and not by yourselves. It is a gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. This idea that grace is a gift indicates that it is given to us out of love, that is not earned. And so if our grace isn't earned, it's not through any human effort. And so it's important for me in this work that I do, that DEI doesn't become a word that is weaponized and criminalized, because diversity is about all people. Equity sets a pathway for everyone. It's important in this work that I do that the word of wokeness, being awakened to the racial injustice, does not become a criminalized word. It's important in this work that the Imago Dei in all people is not criminalized because they come from a different country or they speak a different language. God's love is demonstrated through Christ. He expresses the depth of his love and is connected to grace. But God demonstrates his love toward us, and while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Here we see sacrificial act of Jesus and the manifestation of grace rooted in divine love. And I think that is important in this conversation. And I feel that in this race, Representative Vice President Harris has these qualities. And in the Sermon on the Mount, it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven." A credible witness, you see, bears a witness to the lifestyle of that of humility and vulnerability. And that is what we see in "Blessed are the pure in spirit." We should always have an attitude of repentance. And I see that more so in Vice President Harris. We should become listeners and learners when we demonstrate our meekness, because meekness is a picture of power and strength under control. And I see that in Vice President Harris. I think it's important that we remember this and that we make sure that we are voting with mercy and compassion at the forefront. And what we've seen just over the last year, we've seen the rollback of Roe versus Wade. And I am a person who is pro-life. I am a person that believes in life from the cradle to the grave. But I've seen this weaponized. I've seen this criminalized. I've seen women who have died. And because of that, I can no longer be a one-issue voter.
Now, I understand Christian reservations for voting for Trump. He's no Christian and he has serious, grievous character problems. But this is not a Zoom call of evangelicals against Trump. This is a Zoom call of evangelicals for Harris, which is odd because in terms of character, both candidates have serious and grievous character problems. Trump's not a Christian. Neither is she. Trump's a fornicator. So is she. Trump's an adulterer. So is she. Trump's a liar. So is she. These are both bad people, and from an actual Christian perspective, we only ever vote for bad people because that's all that's available. Jesus is the only possible good candidate, and he's not running for president, and he's not eligible to be president, even if he were running. So every election, all it ever is a sliding scale of bad. Both of these candidates are bad people, deserving of hell, and frankly, judging by their fruit, they are both in desperate need of repentance and salvation in Jesus Christ, or they will end up in hell. So given that they're both bad, the question turns to policy. There are policies that are more or less in alignment with Christianity. DEI is actually not in alignment with Christianity. The biblical concept is equality. It is not to show favoritism. So, for example, my brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ must not show favoritism. DEI, though, is necessarily discriminatory. It does not treat everyone equally. It shows favoritism. It gives preferential treatment to some people over others. That's why there's a distinction between equality and equity. Equality is treating everyone the same. Equity is leveling things so that everyone has equal outcomes, as Kamala Harris has repeatedly said.
We have always fought for equality, but now we are also talking much more rightly about equity, understanding that we must be clear-eyed about the fact that, yes, we want everyone to get an equal amount. That sounds right, but not everyone starts out from the same place. Some people start out on first base, some people start out on third base. And if the goal is truly about equality, it has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more.
But equal outcomes is not a biblical concept. Christianity does not advocate for equal outcomes. There are two very different outcomes in Christianity: heaven and hell. Very different. What's more, there's different outcomes in heaven and hell, different degrees of punishment and reward. DEI is not Christianity. But what about compassion for the poor? What about looking after the foreigner or the widow or the orphan? Those are certainly Christian concepts, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for Christians to conclude that the government should play a role in looking after the downtrodden. The distinction between proper Christian Republicans and Christian Democrats is not ends, but means. The disagreement is, what is the better or best way of being compassionate to the downtrodden? And the reason that's an issue is because there's a distinction between helping and enabling. Helping is good, enabling is bad, but both are motivated by compassion. You see a homeless person and you have compassion on them, so you give them some money. And they take that money and they buy drugs with it. And then they overdose on those drugs and they die. You were compassionate, but did you help them? It is a Christian imperative to help and to want to help and to be compassionate, but there's disagreement about the best way to do that. And I don't think there's only one proper way of going about it. But what irked me in that video was the selective application of the Imago Dei. Oh, the Imago Dei, the Imago Dei. We all have intrinsic worth as human beings as it relates to immigrants, but not as it relates to the unborn. Grieving the end of Roe v. Wade while championing the Imago Dei is really pretty messed up. You know, how twisted is this logic that it's somehow a violation of the Imago Dei to prevent people from entering into our country illegally, but ripping apart human beings limb from limb is not? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Trump is advocating to execute illegal immigrants. I don't think his policy is prescribing the torture of illegals or the robbing of illegals or the violation of their human rights. Just because you're made in the image of God doesn't mean you have the right to be wherever you want, whenever you want. The DNC put up walls around their convention center and only permitted some image bearers to enter and excluded other image bearers. Is that a violation of the Imago Dei? No. Preventing people from coming into the country is a violation of the Imago Dei, but murdering millions of image bearers through abortion is fine by you? You blind guide. You strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. And speaking of blind guides, David French also came out with his support of Harris in the New York Times opinion segment. He says this: I am, for the first time in my adult life, going to vote for a Democrat for president in 2024. I am going to vote for Kamala Harris. Some people say I can't vote for Kamala Harris because I'm pro-life and a Christian. But in fact, I believe Donald Trump is harming the pro-life movement in a profound way. I'm often asked if I'm still conservative. The answer is I'm voting against Trump precisely because I'm conservative. That's why I'm doing it. I was a Reagan Republican because of the commitment of the parties to certain conservative principles. Okay, what are those principles exactly? It wasn't just January 6th, although January 6th elevated the stakes dramatically. It was the 1-2 punch of January 6th and seeing how far Trump himself and MAGA had strayed from its commitment to the American rule of law. It was also then that Russian attack on Ukraine and the response of the Biden-Harris administration to that contrasted with the MAGA response. What I've seen is this administration was on the right side of those issues, and Kamala Harris has doubled down on those commitments to be on the right side of those issues. Okay, so January 6th was bad. Granted, it was bad. And we need to be about the rule of law. Riots are awful, and so I'm going to vote for the candidate that bailed out violent rioters. What? But what about Ukraine? Well, during the Bush administration, Russia invaded Georgia. During the Obama administration, Russia invaded Crimea. During the Trump administration, Russia invaded nothing. During the Biden administration, Russia invaded Ukraine. So I, David French, am so very concerned about Russian aggression that I'm going to vote against the one candidate who has the only track record of stemming Russian aggression. Yeah, that makes sense. Furthermore, the correct position on Ukraine is not a Christian position because the difference between French and Trump is a difference of degree, not of kind. What I mean is this. Everybody agrees that Russia is wrong in its actions. The only question is the degree of our intervention and response. David French is not in support of American boots on the ground in Ukraine. He's not in support of the American military getting involved in the conflict. So the attack of Ukraine is egregious. It's just not egregious enough to spill our blood, which means this is a conflict in which even French agrees that we should weigh the cost. That's not fundamentally different from what Trump is arguing. It's like the old joke. A man asks a girl if she'll sleep with him for $1 million. She says yes. He then offers her $5, and she slaps him in the face, saying, "What kind of girl do you think I am?" And he answers, "I know exactly what kind of girl you are. Now we're just haggling over the price." You won't spend our blood. You will spend our treasure. So there's a limit. Well, so how much of our treasure? Would you bankrupt our country to save Ukraine? We've already spent trillions. How many trillions more would you spend? Isn't there a limit? You're not different from Trump, French. You're just haggling over price. But let's get back to abortion, as that's really the central issue for Christians. How does French justify that? I'm an evangelical Christian, and I've been pro-life for reasons related both to my faith and to my understanding of science and justice, and was one of the primary reasons why I continued my affiliation with the Republican Party because of the Republican Party's consistent commitment to a pro-life position. But with the rise of Donald Trump, I was very, very concerned about his effect. Abortions went up under his presidency, and since the Dobbs decision, the pro-life movement has been in a state of political collapse. It's not even been able to win a referendum in a red state. Trump was the very first president since Carter to end his presidency with a higher abortion rate and ratio and tens of thousands of more abortions. So you're beginning to have a world with more abortions, decreased support for the pro-life movement, and the MAGA movement fundamentally changes the Republican Party platform to the point where it was no longer recognizably pro-life. And it was the most watered-down platform on abortion in 40 years. And so it strikes me as bizarre if people make the argument that as an evangelical Christian, you have to support the man who watered down the pro-life platform in the Republican Party, the man who oversaw the first increase in abortions in decades, the man who has been found liable for sexually abusing a woman, and a man who's bragged about his sexual exploits. That's the person that Christians have to support or they're not being faithful strikes me as not just destructive, but also laughably ridiculous. That is the most asinine thing I've ever heard. So first of all, according to the paper that you work for, the New York Times, since the Dobbs decision, almost a quarter of women who would have gotten abortions carried their pregnancies to term. And instead of giving credit to President Trump for being instrumental in finally overturning Roe v. Wade, which was a goal of all pro-life Christians, you have decided to give your vote to the most pro-abortion candidate in history. When a whistleblower uncovered that Planned Parenthood was selling body parts from abortions, Kamala Harris prosecuted the whistleblower. Her running mate said he's more extreme than Nancy Pelosi on the issue of abortion.
My record is so pro-choice, Nancy Pelosi asked me if I should tone it down. I stand with Planned Parenthood, and we won.
That's who you're voting for because you're a principled pro-life Christian? Oh, the Republicans watered down their pro-life stance, so I'm going to throw my vote to the party that's offering free abortions at their convention. No, what waters down pro-life positions is throwing your support to the party that, according to Planned Parenthood, extinguished the life of 10 people to consecrate their convention. But David French is not naive. I'm not naive. There are things that I would oppose. So, for example, if she is wanting to repeal the Hyde Amendment, which is prohibiting direct federal funding of abortion, I would oppose that. If she was wanting to enact a federal law codifying Roe, I would oppose that. But I would also note that pro-life folks can block some of those policies with their votes down ballot. The president is not. She would not be Queen of America. She would need the votes in the House and the Senate to enact national change. So this idea that everything depends on the vote for the president is just completely wrong. No, you're not naive. You're worse than naive. Everything you said is true also in regards to Trump. The difference is Trump doesn't want to remove the Hyde Amendment, and Trump doesn't want to codify Roe in federal law. Kamala Harris does. And if there were enough pro-life Republicans down the ballot, then maybe stronger national restrictions would pass the House and Senate. And if so, Trump might sign that into law. Or he might not. I don't know. But we know for certain that Kamala Harris would never. So if this is an important policy for you, then you should vote for the candidate that is more likely, not less likely, to enact it. Because pro-life principled Christianity is not idiocy. All right, that'll do for today. But if you want to support something that is pro-life, then check out this trailer for my upcoming feature film, No Greater.
Recently, I had some test work done, and the doctors, they noticed that there is a mass. It's not large, but it is growing, and so what that means is we are having a baby.
I mean, it's messed up, right? You can't be happy for your own daughter.
Your situation isn't normal.
Yeah, I have the mother-in-law from hell.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's where they're all from.
What happened? Have you told her yet? Have you told anybody?
I need us to be together on this.
I could lose you both, then what?
I don't want to die, Joel.
You know, I'm proud of you. And what you did and why you did it matters.
Please, don't. Whatever happens next, this was the right thing.
Tickets for our screening in Visalia are already on sale now, and screenings in Tulare will be available shortly. You can get those at our website, atcfilms.com, or click the link in the description. If you want to help us in this endeavor, enter your email address in our support section. You'll be added to our mailing list, which will give you detailed information about our fundraising efforts, our mission and vision, and exclusive upcoming details about our next project and how you can help. So be sure to do that. Also, if you like what we're doing here, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and review. Tell a friend. You can also follow me on the major socials, join my author's Facebook page, and I'll see you next time for more Appropriating the Culture.